How's it going, everyone? My name is Sean, and I'm here again for another movie review. So this time we're doing The Crow. So this is the 2024 reimagining. They like to throw that word around quite a bit lately. The reimagining of the 1994 original film The Crow that starred Brandon Lee, which many of you probably already know was unfortunately the film that cost him his life, but it has gone on to be a classic, especially with gothic fans and dark fantasy fans. And just to give myself the little backstory here, I never actually saw The Crow for whatever reason until yesterday in preparation for this film. And I actually liked it quite a bit. I don't know why I never bothered watching it. I just didn't. It's just one of those things that kind of never I never got around to doing, I guess. But the original kind of begins with the deaths of two main characters, Eric and Shelley. So Eric being the main character, Brandon Lee's character, and he gets resurrected by a supernatural spirit, the Crow, and goes off on a mission of kind of sort of a vengeance, but also it's a story of love and never forgetting memories and that sort of thing. So it's very heartfelt. It's based on a graphic novel or comic book that was written by James O'Barr, who wrote it in the 80s after his fiancee died. So it's very, very personal tale. And he was directly involved with the 1994 film, became friends with Brandon Lee, and then when he passed away again, it became a personal story for him as well. And he was involved in various incarnations of the Crow over the years to varying degrees. I know he was supposed to be heavily involved with a version of this film about 10 years ago, but I'm not sure how involved the creator was with this particular film. So this movie is directed by Rupert Sanders, who directed Snow White and the Huntsman and the Ghost in the Shell film. And this stars Bill Sgarsgard, who many will know as Pennywise from the It films, and was also the bad guy in the most recent John Wick film, which there's some slight John Wick comparisons here. And also FKA Twigs, who stars as Shelley in this, who has a much bigger role this time than the original, which she had almost no role in the original, just the catalyst for the story. And Danny Huston as the demonic villain Vincent, which is quite a departure from the original film. So anyway, like I said, this is being heralded by the creators as a reimagining. Do not call it a remake or a reboot. Apparently, they tried to do something completely different with the story, which kind of begs the question, why? Like, if you don't want to be associated at all with the original film, and you don't want people to draw comparisons, then, maybe just don't do it. There's always that option. Because people are inevitably going to compare it to the original. They're inevitably going to compare it to the comic book, which admittedly I've never actually read the source material for this, but having seen the original film, I'm going to flat out say it right now, I would recommend you go watch the original film and just end it there. So if you're somebody that hasn't seen the original, like myself, certainly there has to be somebody out there that never actually watched it. I would take this opportunity to finally go back and check that film out. It's definitely worth it. It holds up. It's 30 years old at this point, but it's just as good now as it was then. So let's talk about this version. So I guess the story actually follows Shelley more than Eric, which is a huge departure from the original. And where the original begins right after the murder, and it follows, obviously, Eric as he comes back as the Crow, but also follows a cop that was played by Ernie Hudson. He has no parallel in this film. And there was a little girl that Eric and Shelley helped take care of, Sarah. She also doesn't exist in this film. So any of the ancillary characters from the original don't exist at all in this. This story picks up at the very beginning with Shelley kind of on the run from the organization she works for, which is led by a demonic entity of some sort, Vincent, who's played by Danny Huston. I guess he sold his soul to the devil or something. It's kind of vague. So I guess he's immortal because he talks about he lived for centuries, but there's not much else. He's not a vampire. We don't really know what he is. He's just kind of there. So while she's on the run, I guess her friend took a videotape, has a video or something that is incriminating evidence, and she got caught and killed by Vincent's men. And now Shelley's on the run. She runs right into two cops and drops her handbag, and I guess her purse is just full of every drug known to man. Like, she's got multiple different types of paraphernalia in there. So she gets arrested, presumably, because we cut to rehab. So I'm guessing she got sent to court-ordered rehabilitation or something. This is where she meets Eric, who is our lead, Bill Sgarsgard's character, Eric Draven, who is the Crow, or will become the Crow. He is a tortured artist. And why is he a tortured character who's fallen onto hard times? Well, because his horse died when he was a kid. That's the reason for why he is such a tormented man decades later. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love animals. And, I'm a huge fan of John Wick. The catalyst of that story, there's more going on. But the catalyst of that story is they killed his dog. And then he goes on a rampage and kills 80 people and wipes out a whole Russian mafia. So I get it. Believe me, I get it. But the reason why your character has gone in and out of drug addictions for decades goes back to an incident when he was a child when his horse fell into barbed wire or something. There's some brief mention or allusion to the fact that his mom's a drug addict or something, but they don't really go into that. All we do is we see this dream sequence of a horse, and maybe we're going into Rob Zombie Halloween territory, and the white horse is actually symbolic of something else. I have no idea what they're actually trying to get at. But anyway, yeah, that's his backstory. His horse died when he was a kid on a farm. So anyway, they get to know each other for about 5 minutes. There's almost very little characterization other than the fact that he's an artist. He draws a lot of great pictures, and he's a drug addict. And he likes horses, apparently, although that never comes up again. They escape from the drug rehabilitation facility, which I assume, at least in her case, was, like I said, court-ordered, because she got arrested by the police. So she just walks out with this other person at the rehab clinic, which I suppose would be inmates at this point because of the fact that, there was a law involved. And they just walk out, and at no point do the police actually try to find them again. Apparently you can just leave whenever you want. So even though you're apparently arrested on possession charges. Okay, so they go to this really super fancy house or apartment that in wherever they're at, Austria or Germany or something. And they proceed to have lots and lots of sex, do lots and lots of drugs, and get drunk a lot. Just like rehab would have wanted them to do. So anyway, they apparently didn't learn anything the entire time they were in the rehabilitation facility. They're eventually caught by Vincent's henchmen and are killed. So now we are where the original film started. Whoa. Sorry about the camera at times has some issues. So anyway, we are back to where we started in the original. So the film begins now. 45 minutes into the film. Maybe an hour into the film. I don't know. It's a long time before this thing starts going. And we are really introduced to Eric, who ends up in some kind of purgatory that is a train yard or something with a bunch of crows everywhere. And he meets this guy who I guess is a mentor. He doesn't actually teach him anything, but it reminded me of the ghost mentor in the Patrick Swayze film Ghost, where he learns how to like interact with the environment in a train car, so in a subway or whatever. So this is another purgatory train station. They tell him that he has to go back and kill everyone who wronged him, and he could bring back Shelley in the process, which seems like a massive betrayal of the source material. If you could just undo everything and bring back your dead loved ones, like I think that was kind of goes against the whole point of the original story, but okay. So he goes on an incredibly inept revenge where he just gets shot repeatedly, stabbed multiple times. I mean, he kills everybody, but of course he does. He can regenerate and he's immortal. So, like, there's no stakes here. The original film, he was also immortal. He knew how to fight better than this guy. Obviously, he's Brandon Lee. But there's a point where there's a crow, and obviously, and they injure the crow, and it takes away his immortality. So there's some stakes added here. This has no stakes at all. He's just immortal forever. And there's no crow. I mean, there is, but it just kind of shows up and just points him in the direction. It's like a wayfinder thing. And he doesn't react to the crow at all, probably because it was added in CGI or something after the production. But that's weird to me, considering his whole backstory is driven by the death of an animal, that he would have no connection whatsoever to another animal. Seems weird. Like, it seems like you're going to play up this thing with the horse. You think you would play up some kind of connection with the crows as well, but they never do that. I know that's not really a thing that's in the comic book. I think the crow in the comic book is entirely a spirit being, and no one else can see it but him. I guess that I've never actually read it, so that's my understanding. But here the crow just kind of points him in the direction, and he's got to kill everyone. He has to kill Vincent and everything else. And the reason they're given here is because Vincent is this crazy demonic entity or something like that, which I guess makes some sense. Why Eric is given these powers, not anybody that lost a loved one or was wrongfully murdered or something like that. But it's still weird. So he gets out of his little train station in hell, and then he goes back to the regular world, kills a few guys, gets shot a whole bunch of times. He has like zero fighting ability, at least at first. Which is funny because they keep putting Bill Sgarsgard in these action roles. He was just in another film not that long ago that also tanked at the box office. I can't remember the name of it. It was a little bit intriguing. I think he was like mute or deaf in that. It had Famke Janssen in it, so it's like I wanted to check it out, but I never actually did. And now he's in this. It's like he was also in John Wick Chapter 4, but he didn't really do much fighting in that. So it's like they're trying to make Bill Sgarsgard into like this action hero, but then they're not giving him decent action. Like, the action in this film's not very good. It's mostly just him getting shot a bunch of times and then him stabbing somebody. And there's one point where he gets hit with a shotgun and it takes him out to train purgatory for a bit, and then he comes back, but whatever. There is a cool part towards the end at the opera house where he uses the world's smallest katana. It's like somewhere between a katana and a wakizashi. It's a very unusual sword. It's like a kodachi or something. He uses that to kill a bunch of dudes. There's some horror level gore effects that's kind of nice. They're CGI effects, but they're not so bad compared to other ones. His regeneration, his healing factor actually looks kind of cool. These are minor things that I'm giving this film because it has some pluses somewhere, but they're negligible. So Eric goes into the opera house, kills a bunch of dudes, walks out into the audience and just throws 2 severed heads at the audience. The audience didn't do anything to this guy. Those are just innocent people that are in a crowd. And at this point, Vincent's gone anyway, so that was pointless. The police take forever to get there, and he just leaves. Cool. Like I said, the action here is weird. It's like they tried to give it almost this John Wick feel to it, but that's pointless because John Wick already is ultra-violent in the first place, so they're not really saying anything by making an ultra-violent John Wick. And on top of that, I guess it's kind of totally unrelated to this shit, but as a side note, Chad Stahelski, I think, was actually Brandon Lee's stunt double in a couple scenes for The Crow, so there is a John Wick connection to the original Crow. But it's much better than this. So anyway, eventually he does catch up to Vincent. They kind of fight for a bit, and he kills him, and then he ends up in train purgatory, I guess at some point in the film, he made a deal that since apparently he screwed up and he wasn't able to resurrect himself and Shelley, but he made a deal that he trade his soul for hers. So in the end, he brings Shelley back to life. She's able to live her life, but he continues to exist in train crow purgatory, I guess. I mean, I don't think he goes to hell. I think he stays there, and I don't know if he's like a tool for vengeance or something. I have no idea what they're implying there. And that's basically it. That's The Crow. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's very mid. It's like, I would literally say it's mid. I'd give it like a 5, somewhere in there, 5 out of 10. Yeah, it's just forgettable, like very mediocre. And I think if the original Crow didn't exist, this would still be considered a mediocre film. It doesn't seem to really adapt the source material any better than the original did. In fact, I think the original, while not being fully truthful to the source material itself, I'm sure, seemed to have more in common. There was more characters that are taken right out of the comics and that sort of thing. This doesn't have that many characters. There's no characters in this film really that have any meaning other than the guys he's got to kill, Eric, Shelley. Shelley's mom shows up for a bit, but she doesn't really do much. And that guy in the purgatory place. And that's about it. Who's apparently like a skeleton cowboy or something in the comic book, which is admittedly way cooler than what we got. Yeah, I would not recommend this film. Like I said, go check out the original film if you haven't already. If you're a fan of the original film, just go rewatch the original. Apparently, there's been numerous sequels. There was a television series. None of it has worked. This film went through like 20 years of attempted reboots before they finally made this. I know Jason Momoa was involved at some point. I think Tom Hiddleston was involved at some point. So it was a very troubled production, and I can see why. I guess the original author was involved with one of those earlier versions, but I don't know if he was involved in this particular incarnation that much. But yeah, there's my review for The Crow. I can't recommend it, unfortunately. I mean, if you do want to check it out, wait for the bargain theater if you have one, or like when it comes out on video, DVD, Blu-ray, what have you, streaming, something for like that. Just wait for that. So there's my review for The Crow. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing for more like this in the future, and you too could feel the strength welling within. See ya.